One sec.
Yulia, oh,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes. Go ahead.
I need the slides, so let me get this slide. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pivoters 2.0 Tech-Enabled Recovery in the Age of Social Distancing. Today's topic is 5 insider secrets to getting that job, communicating effectively to break through the crowd. And we're so happy to have with us today Ari M. Weinstein, business coaching and brand development specialist. And are we on the second slide?
You tell me.
If we could go to the second slide, please. Open Hub project is the Hudson Valley's tech hub. We are the tech hub for Dutchess, Orange, and Ulster counties. Our mission is building robust pathways to a thriving and inclusive tech-driven Hudson Valley. Next page, please. Next slide, please.
Oops.
And thank you. Pivoters 2.0 is a series of workshops. The last workshop was from Cynthia Marcello. She gave a data workshop for small businesses using Excel, and at the end giving an Excel resource to every single small business owner that took the workshop. Today, Ari is going to be doing a workshop for job seekers, which we're really excited about. And we're doing this webisode series as perhaps as a substitute for the Hudson Valley Tech Fest for 2020, because it was supposed to be in October and the pandemic shut down. We have had to pivot, and this is our pivot. We stay tuned about a hackathon that is going to be coming up. And we're just planning it right now, and hopefully it will be in October as well. Next slide, please. So I'm so happy to introduce Ari Weinstein. Ari, would you like to say hi?
Hello, everyone. I trust you can hear me above the sound of rain and thunder outside.
Yeah.
Thanks for attending this event. It is being recorded, so if you registered and are missing it for some reason, you will be able to get a hold of the recording, I understand. So just a quick word about me. I run my own business, and I help technology professionals communicate better so that they can become more successful professionally, whether on their current job or in getting their next job. I presented a version of this workshop at the last HV Tech Festival in 2019. It was extremely well received, and I was very happy to adapt it and hopefully improve it to address the current environment that we're in, which it certainly is very challenging for job seekers. So I look forward to speaking with you and hopefully helping you out today.
Thanks so much, Ari. It's so timely, and it's going to be a great resource for Open Hub to offer. So thank you very much, and welcome to everybody. I'm going to put up my photo and let Ari take it away.
Okay.
Next slide, please.
All right. So the title of today's workshop is Communicating Effectively to Land Your Next Job. Communicating effectively can be challenging for anyone who's really good at what they do, or either very highly educated, highly experienced, or both. And in today's workshop, what I want to help all of you do is become aware how you communicate. The way in which you communicate gives an impression, and that impression is your brand. So that's why I combine business coaching and brand development, because at the end of the day, what I've found is clients succeed more when they can communicate better. So that's what I'm hoping to share with you today. communicating effectively so you can land your job. Let's go to the next slide. So I have a 5-step process or 5 things that I'd like to focus on with you today. And I've tailored this workshop and this presentation to the current environment, which is very challenging. There are all of a sudden many more job seekers than there are jobs available. So what can we do to help anyone seeking a job? We'll cover being open and recognizing that opportunities are everywhere and not necessarily where you'd think to look. We'll cover connecting, both in terms of networking, actually making a connection, but also knowing your customer so that you can feel connected to them. Knowing your strengths. In the IT world, we all are very proud of our skills, our certifications, the languages we know, the hardware we're familiar with, but those are skills. What I really want to help you become aware of is your strengths, how you deliver results using those skills. We'll also talk about speaking plainly. Hopefully, I'm speaking plainly in language that is applicable to anyone, whether you're in the IT world or not. Speaking plainly turns out to be a really great tactic for getting people's attention, especially people in management positions, the people who are going to hire you. And finally, what's really important in this day and age is having a system, having a strategy and a means to execute that strategy so that you can consistently, day in and day out, measure and be aware of where you are in your job search. So that's what we'll cover. Next slide, please. So I have a little exercise for us. I'm going to ask Shelly or Yulia, whoever can do breakout rooms, to break us out into rooms of 2, to break participants out into rooms of 2. And in 10 minutes or less, feel free to leave the room if you've done this after 10 minutes, I'd like you to introduce yourselves to each other. When we come back from the breakout rooms, I'm going to ask one of you to introduce the person you met in the breakout room, to tell me their name and what they do. Okay? So this is an exercise to demonstrate why learning to communicate better can really help you. So is everyone ready for breakout rooms? Let's do it.
welcome, Carmen. Hillary, I don't think you joined the breakout room. Carmen, we are in the middle of the exercise right now.
Oh, I couldn't see anything. It was just showing me the Zoom screen when I hit joined, and I didn't hear anything either, so I just clicked leave room. I'm not sure.
It's okay, you can stay here. Usually it takes time for both people joining the room.
Oh, maybe that was it. I'm sorry.
And Hillary, you have a chance to socialize with others in the room. I mean, with others in the main room right now. Right? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm not. Do you want me to? Maybe I just have the screen on a weird view because all I can see now is your screen.
It's
Is
totally
that
fine.
right?
That's the exercise. It's totally fine. You can speak. That's where
Okay.
the rooms we're standing for.
Sure. Do you want me to just introduce myself?
Sure, please.
Oh, okay. I'm Hillary. I know we've met before. I work at RCal, the Resource Center for Accessible Living in Kingston, and I do employment services.
It was quick. It was very short. So let us see. Okay, it's only us right now here. And I stopped sharing.
Oh.
Let's,
Oh, now I can.
Yes, let's stop here.
Okay.
My name is Yulia. I run Open Hub. And I do educational technology, tech for education. And I do workforce development. But mainly speaking, we do workforce development.
Okay.
Building technology hub for people, organizations, and the region.
Awesome.
Now make sure you will be ready to talk about myself, and I will try to introduce you.
Okay.
Based on what I heard, do you want to give it another try? Just improving?
Sure, I can expand if you'd like. So RCal is the Independent Living Center. We serve all of the Ulster County. Sorry, my dog just walked in the room. We serve all of Ulster County and some of the surrounding areas, and we help people with any type of disability on their independent living goals. I specifically work in employment and help people get jobs or careers more specifically.
Way better. Look at you.
Okay.
So I will, Ari, if you do want to do screen sharing going forward, feel free to do that.
Okay.
I mean, Ari, our coach and mentor. So let me close all rooms because it's time.
All right.
Let's get everyone back. Less than 1 minute.
All right. Let me see if I can figure out how to go back.
No, you don't need to.
Okay. All right. I won't touch anything then.
And it looks like Miriam and Pauline are still enjoying each other. This is awesome. Let them finish. Ari, would you like to start screen sharing on your side with your slide deck?
If that would be easier, I'm happy to do it.
Yes, please. Few more seconds for the last couple finishing up.
Yeah, just let me know when they're back in the main session. Thanks. Oh, there we go.
Yes, they are. Welcome back, everyone.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. So can everyone hear me okay? Still good on audio, video? And can you see the giant slide with the introductions? Okay. So by a show of hand, or actually, I don't know if I can see the chat, but yeah, if you can indicate that you are willing and able to, if you are willing and able to introduce the person you met in the breakout room, put up your hand. Who wants to volunteer? Marion, am I pronouncing your name correctly? And you're on mute, so unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi, Marion. So whom did you meet, and introduce us?
Okay, so I met Pauline. She's an HR professional living in Maryland. She really enjoys solving problems. You know, when someone comes to her with an HR problem, she likes to be able to provide a solution. She's currently job hunting. They were furloughed as a result of the pandemic. And I was really impressed that Pauline was telling me about how she's studying, doing a home study program to take the HR professional exam in October. And I was really impressed by the organization that she has to be able to, you know, discipline herself to do the necessary studying towards that exam.
Great.
And on a personal level, she enjoys gardening and baking.
Nice. So thank you very much, Marion. Thanks for introducing Pauline. Pauline, welcome. You and I have met, so full disclosure there.
Yes.
But it's very nice to be introduced to you by Marion. And Marion, you did a great job of communicating what you heard from Pauline. I think Pauline did a really good job of communicating. She started by saying what she enjoys doing. She enjoys solving problems. And that's perhaps more memorable than the way in which many professionals introduce ourselves to each other, which is we give our titles. Ari Weinstein, and I'm a brand specialist. What does that mean? But I like what Pauline did is she told more of a story, which is she talked about what she likes, what she enjoys doing. And that's a really good segue into our next slide. So we have this problem, and this is not just in IT, but you know, this is an IT-focused workshop. But you'll see this problem in other fields, which is that this is an actual job listing. You're looking at it. Don't try to read this whole slide, by the way. This is an actual job. And do you see a problem here? It just doesn't give me a single word about why I might want to work here. It's purely based. You have to have this skill and that skill and this experience. Okay? So my first message to a lot of my clients and the people in my workshops is, if you sense a problem when it comes to communicating about what you love to do and what you're good at doing, the problem is not you. It just isn't. Employers are not good at giving us meaningful job listings and a reason why we might want to work with them. So that's the first thing that I want to point out. And sadly, this problem is persisting now. There are fewer jobs, and yet we're not seeing great improvement in the quality of listings from our view. So that requires that we take these additional steps that we'll go through today to address the problem. By the way, I want to invite all of you to submit questions via the chat. I will try to pay attention to the chat as we're going along and to answer your questions. Okay? So we talked about a 5-step process to help you in the current job market. The first of those steps is to be open to the idea that opportunities for employment can come from anywhere. Okay? So I really want you to know that and appreciate that. It's important to appreciate that because leading up to the pandemic, we were in the longest period of economic expansion, I believe, in our history. And so the job guidance that career coaches like me were giving to our clients was specialize. Be a specialist and focus on what you can do best, and don't look for jobs outside of your area because you have all the leverage, right? You get to say to employers, hey, this is what I do. Take it or leave it. But the tables have turned. With so many people unemployed and so many skilled professionals looking for work, to be a little more open to opportunities that may not be aligned to what we look at. Now, there's some good news here because employers are having to be a little bit open too. Because of the pandemic, they have no choice but to offer remote work, and remote work can greatly expand your reach. But what I'd like you to consider is what else you can do other than your core competency, your core expertise. What else can you do? Because the skills that you have, those skills that we saw listed in that job listing, those skills are transferable. Merely the fact that you have those skills mean that you have the capacity to learn those skills and to execute them and to do the things that are described in these job descriptions. But those things are not unique to any one job, and they're not unique to you. So that's why I have this circle in the corner that says, don't let your specialty limit you. Think of your specialty more broadly. You're a specialist in something, but what does that mean? What can you actually do aside from your specialty that requires similar skill? And what you'll find is that being open increases your reasons to connect and your opportunities for connections with people. Okay? So let me pause here and ask if there are any questions, and feel free to come off mute and raise your hand or signal that you have a question. Any questions about the idea of being open and being more open than no questions? Okay, I'm going to move on. Remember, if you're late in thinking of your question, put it in the chat. I'm going to save the chat and endeavor to answer all the questions. Okay, so Yulia is asking what to do about your broad spectrum of specialty and interest. So Yulia, help me understand your question. Are you referring to someone who's skilled in many different areas?
Yes, and we need
Yes.
a few amazing people who has both technology experience, very deep and broad, so hard to narrow it down. At the same time, they have business experience, entrepreneurial experience.
Great. Yes. So Yulia asked a really good question, which is if you do have many years of experience, and sadly people with many years of experience have lost their jobs or been furloughed, so what do you do about that? That is actually a slightly different problem that I work on with my clients. I actually specialize in working with clients who are very highly educated, highly experienced, or both. So what do we do about the broad spectrum? That's where we try to narrow down, and we'll get to this section of the presentation called Speaking Plainly and saying, tell me in plain language, what is a problem that you can solve? So, and we focus on results because certain results require more than one skill. Just today, I had a meeting in which we discussed a problem that was solved in the workplace, and that problem involved way more than one skill. There were probably 5 or 6 skills employed to solve this problem because it was a problem with process, it was a problem with people, it was a little bit of a problem with technology. It was a communication problem. It was a training problem. Think of all the things I just listed. Those are all different skills. So what you do is learn to tell a story about the problems you can solve, and we will actually get to that later in the presentation. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So the next topic, once you're open and hopefully more open to connecting with people, let's talk about connecting. Now I have 2 slides here. Connecting by networking, and then actually connecting, meaning making some kind of a connection, a logical connection or an emotional connection between you and someone you'd like to work with. So the next few slides feature quotes in the orange box. And I won't read these to you, but I'd like to tell you about the person who gave me these quotes. His name is Satya Gade. He's a friend and former colleague of mine, and he is the Associate Director of Infrastructure at KPMG US. When we last spoke, he was in the middle of hiring a small army of IT professionals. And he provided a great deal of wisdom that I'm sharing with you on these slides about his perspective about how IT people, or anyone who's really a specialist at something, can do a better job of communicating what they're good at. And one of the things that we tend to do when we become specialists is we tend to find circles of people who are like us, so we don't network necessarily. So our message, mine and Satya's, and again, he employs a lot more people than I do, is that even if it's uncomfortable, you should network, and you should network outside of your current circles. It becomes very easy, and I'm guilty of this myself, right? Yesterday, I ran a panel for people who are members of my professional association. So I wasn't networking out of my specialty. I was networking with, 140 other business coaches. But we're all guilty of this, of not really looking outside of our circles. And remember, we said that what you want to do is be open. So who else, what other industries that interest me or that I'm drawn to might be of interest? Who can I network to? Who can I talk to who might be interested in me? It's easier said than done, and this is not a problem that's easily solved, but that is what I encourage you to do, is to start networking outside of your current circles. Remember that if you're open and you start looking at job listings in other industries, you might be surprised at what you find. So learning to know where the jobs are might be really helpful. I'd like to give you an example. If you go onto LinkedIn, along the right-hand side of your screen, I'm not sure where this is on mobile, but on a desktop, along the right-hand side of your screen, they have news. And now, as sort of a pinned news item, they have a story called Who's Hiring Right Now. If you go look at that, you'll see a list of companies that are hiring. An example of a company that's hiring that I perhaps wouldn't think of working for is AutoZone. It's a company that has stores. You've probably seen them. They have stores here in the Hudson Valley. AutoZone sells auto parts and accessories for your car. Now, they are hiring 17,000 people. Now, it's a good chance that a big portion of those 17,000 people are, in fact, in customer service or at a counter in an AutoZone store. But there is a percentage of people in that big hiring push that are IT people, or that have to have some other specialized skill. So maybe you wouldn't think under normal circumstances to work for AutoZone, but why not reach out to, an IT manager at AutoZone and say, hey, I see you're at AutoZone and I hear you guys are hiring. Are they hiring in your area? And you start a conversation. The benefits of connecting outside of your circles is you'll start to get a broader view of the job market. What is actually going on? Who is actually hiring? What kind of jobs are hiring? Are they indeed letting people work remotely, right? Are they hiring contractors or full-timers? Are they hiring full-time or part-time positions? And all these other things. Connecting is also really important, especially given the current circumstances, because we need to connect with real people. Not just with job listings, not just with social media profiles, but with real people. And the final benefit of connecting is this will enable you to practice speaking plainly about what you do, which is a topic we'll go into more depth later on. So that's what I have to say about connecting by networking. Does anyone have any comments or questions about networking? No. Okay. All right. Well, I thank you for networking today in the breakout rooms. Now, the next thing that's really worthwhile doing is connecting by knowing your customer. You'll see the quote here from Satya, who says that learning about the business you're in, not just about the job that's being advertised or that you learned about or that you're interested in, but about the overall business is really, really valuable. He points out that just doing that, if you were within a firm, just reaching out to other business people in the firm outside of your specialty area could lead to new connections. But remember what I told you earlier, that all of your skills are transferable. So if you have a certain skill and you can imagine that skill being put to good use at some company that you might not have thought previously of connecting with, you've just made a connection, right? The way I did by describing AutoZone, I said, well, AutoZone surely is hiring a lot of customer service people, but with increased demand on customer service reps, there's also increased demand on their IT infrastructure. So might they not be hiring IT people? And might they not be hiring people like me who are infrastructure specialists? You see, I made a connection. I connected the dots between what I do and what the employer does. Connecting those dots is really valuable. It's a great brain exercise, a great thought exercise, but it's also something real that you can take and use as the basis for a conversation with someone that you might not have thought to connect with in the past. So, and that's why I say here, consider how what you do could potentially help someone you've not met, someone that you're just connecting with. Think about that, learn about them, and think about whether what you do can help them. Yulia, did you have a comment?
Yes, we have a question in the chat.
Aha,
I think it's
okay.
valuable question.
Thank you for the question, Marion. So, Marion, hope you don't mind, but I'm going to read your question. I'm terrified of networking. For example, during the social hour before a professional event, for example, walking up to a stranger, I tend to hide or avoid the social hour. So, Marion, I want to assure you that you are not alone. I myself am at times introverted, believe it or not. And I actually started out my career being very shy. So there are some tips to networking and connecting with people in ways that can help you overcome that fear that you have about talking to people. So number one, in this day and age, we are meeting like this. So you know what? You're not in a big crowd. You're not having to approach a stranger. You're in a meeting and you chose to be in this meeting. Generally, by the time we get onto a Zoom meeting, we already have something in common. I have something to teach that you want to learn. So we have something in common. So you can start the conversation with me around the topic of what brought us together into this meeting. Another thing you can do, a tip I learned from one of my best coaches, and I have several. So if I refer to my coach, it might not all be the same person. But one of my favorite coaches says, you know, when it comes to networking, what an introverted person might do is prepare ahead of time by doing something that energizes them as an introvert. For example, going for a walk alone in the woods, right? Going for a hike, right? Or sitting with a good book for a few hours before the event, so that you get that. One of the definitions of introverts versus extroverts is that they get energized or charged up via different mechanisms. So they find social situations either energy giving or energy draining, or they find solitary pursuits to either be draining and boring or energizing. So do whatever energizes you before you do that which drains your energy. So if you find social situations to be an energy drain, do the opposite of that beforehand, and that will prepare you. Okay, so that's a little tip that I learned. I found it to be enormously helpful. You may have to do it afterwards too. It's like, oh my gosh, I just socialized with 50 people. What a nightmare. I now need to decompress. Totally understood. So that's something you can do. Is that a helpful tip?
Yeah, I could totally do that, because at least in the past, I would travel down to the city and I could always plan something before the event, which would also seem to be like a conversation starter, like, oh, I just saw the, Brooklyn Bridge on the way here or whatever. But
Exactly.
yeah, that is helpful. I think it would help to both energize and sort of relax me before.
Well, it's a phenomenal tip, and the coach I'm referring to is a psychologist and has been doing what he does for well over 20 years. So I trust him, and I found that the technique actually does work. So that's one technique. The other thing to do is understand that your fear comes from, and this is something we studied when as a certified coach, I was studying the neuroscience behind coaching and why coaches are able to help their clients. And the reason is because we can help you aware of the fact that your brain is trying at any given moment to defend you and not disrupt the status quo that makes you feel comfortable. So if you're comfortable sitting alone, your brain's like, hey, you're happy sitting here alone. Don't go into a social situation. That's going to make you nervous. That's your brain. And what you need to do is fight that, because you ultimately have control over your brain, right? So this fight and flight response that you have, you can actually overcome. You say, there's no real existential threat to my being in this social situation. It's just something I'm not used to. It's something I'm not comfortable of doing. It doesn't give me energy. It drains my energy. But you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. And that's a saying we have in coaching is be afraid, but do it anyway, because it will benefit you. And that gets to the last point of this slide, right? That ultimately what can really help us connect is to recognize that what we're all good at doing, all of us in any field, if we have even the least bit of experience or if we have training, we are ready and able to solve problems. And that's really all the business world wants of us, is they want us to solve their problems. And IT people, or even people in other fields, are problem solvers. So if you can celebrate that fact that you're a problem solver and connect with people whose problems you can imagine yourself solving, you are connecting the dots between what you can do and what an employer wants. Okay? Now, hello, Sophia. How are you? Sophia joined and asked a question. What type of connections do you consider the most fruitful in terms of remote job contacts? So that's a great question. It addresses a little bit of what's on the previous slide about networking. And what I'm encouraging people to do, and it's funny because I got asked a very similar question, Sophia, by another coach today. And she said, well, do you recommend to your candidates that they connect within their industry? And I said, no, not just in your industry. Look for connections outside of your industry. Those can be more fruitful. Here are 2 reasons why. Number 1, when you're connecting within your industry, many of your connections are your competitors. So imagine an industry event where you are, let's use me as an example. I'm a graphic designer. It's one of the things I do for my clients is graphic design. If I don't go to a convention of graphic designers, am I likely to find employers? No, I'm finding competitors. There's a bunch of graphic designers. I'll get industry knowledge. I'll learn the latest trends. What are the hot colors this year? All that, what's the best tool for doing, page layout, what are the latest advancements in the software that I use? That's all great. That's all well and good, but that's not going to get me a job. So the number 1 reason to connect with people outside of your industry, connections that I consider valuable, are connections outside of your industry, because they're not likely to be your competitors, and you're going to learn something. And the second reason to connect outside of your industry is because most people, unless you're attending one of these events, are not doing what I just said, right? They're not doing what I just advised you to do. Most people connect with people they know. I'm telling you, the most valuable connections are outside of your circles. They don't have to be far outside of your circles. You can connect with your second and third degree connections on LinkedIn, right? People who know the people you know. And in some cases, people whom you don't know, but you're attracted to something they're doing or to their company, right? Those can turn out to be enormously fruitful connections. So that's my personal opinion based on current experience and the current dynamics of the job market, in which the leverage is with the employers. So you might as well go and make yourself familiar with as many employers as possible to increase your chances. Does that make sense? And thanks for a great question. Okay, so next, we have the next step in our process. So let's just quickly review where we are, right? We talked about being open. We talked about connecting in two ways, connecting as in networking and introducing yourself, and connecting meaning becoming familiar with different opportunities and seeing a connection, finding some emotional or logical connection between what you do and what these people that you've not connected with before do, so that you can get more opportunities. Now that you're making the, what should you be doing? Well, this seminar is all about communicating. And the first step to communicating is to know your strengths. So let's remember back to that job listing I showed at the beginning of the workshop. Remember all those words and all those terms? Those are skills. Skills are not strengths. Your strengths, I like to say, is what do you do best? And what Satya is saying in the quote here, remember Satya is Associate Director for Infrastructure at KPMG US, responsible for hiring an army of engineers to transform the way KPMG is doing business. And he says the value of any professional is measured on the goals achieved from a business point of view. What do they mean from a business point of view? We don't care about the technical details of what you did. We care about the results. What were the results? Well, we increased efficiency. We increased sales. We made people happier. So if you think about the accomplishments that you're most proud of, don't think of the skills that you used to achieve that. Think of what it is that you did best. And what are you proud of? If you're proud of the fact that now customer satisfaction went up to 97%, where it was formerly 82%, that's tremendous. You increased customer satisfaction by 15%, and you're proud of that. And how did you do that? Well, you can go into the details, but what is it that you did best? That's a question to ask yourself. Now, there's a methodology that we can use to do this. And we can practice this. Is that on the next slide? No. But we might do this later as an exercise. And that's to tell a PAR story. A PAR story is a story that tells people a problem that you were confronted with, the action that you took, and what the result was. When you have this PAR story, that can become a little 60-second commercial for what you do, which is great for the situation that I put you in earlier today, which is to introduce yourself to somebody. Well, how do you introduce yourself? Why not tell a story? So I have a visual aid here, and I'm going to tell you a story. Let me find my visual aid. Let's see. Okay. All right, here's my visual aid. Can everyone see this? Yes? No? Feel free to speak up. So I'm holding up a patch.
I can see it, but it's small.
Yes, we do see this.
Oh, okay. So this says Three Rivers Manufacturing, TRM USA, Tycoon. So what is this? And what's the story here? I'm going to tell you a PAR story. A client approached me who had 20 years of experience in precision manufacturing, but they had a problem. The manufacturing that they did wasn't direct to consumer, it was for other businesses. But they wanted to enter the direct to consumer market with their own line of products. They didn't know how to market to consumers, how to appeal to consumers. But they had an idea. They said, maybe we can't use our main logo because it doesn't mean anything to a consumer. Maybe we should have a mascot. And they like the name Tycoon because the T-I in Tycoon, the T-I is the chemical symbol for titanium, which is one of the materials that they had expertise in machining. Very, very tough material to machine, right? In case you didn't know, it is. And expensive. So they were experts at this. And their question was, Ari, how can we be appealing to consumers? Can we do a mascot? We like the name Tycoon. What kind of mascot can we create that we would call a tycoon? And it turned out that they hired another designer who didn't work out because the other designer offered them two options: a raccoon called a tycoon, and the little Monopoly guy, kind of a figure, right? The little Monopoly guy, you know, with the top hat. You know, he's meant to represent a rich tycoon. They didn't like that. I asked my client, do you have any pets? Oh, yes, I do, Ari. In fact, we bring our two silky terriers to the office every day. And here are some pictures. I said, I took one of the pictures, made a sketch, put a collar around its neck in my sketch, and wrote TI on the dog tag. Said, there's your mascot. What do you think? Perfect. This mascot, Ty the Tycoon, became the logo for the consumer-facing products of Three Rivers Manufacturing in Massachusetts. And they now are unable to meet demand for their products because their products are that good. So this is the story, right? It's an example of a problem, an action that I took to think a little bit outside the box. And what the result was, the result is they now have a very well-known brand. They've won several awards for their consumer products, and they can't keep up with demand. So if you can tell a little story, it's much more interesting. It's an interesting way of talking about yourself. And what was my strength here? What do I do best? I think of other visual things that might be of interest, like, well, it's a mascot, it's an animal, but you didn't like a raccoon. Well, do you have pets? Right? It's just a logical thing. And, you know, if my client had said no, I would have said, well, what kind of animal? You didn't like the raccoon. I like the idea of an animal based on your products. I think an animal would be appropriate. What kind of animals do you like? So that's my strength, is in talking to customers and understanding their requirements and really making that connection with them. So, I notice a comment here. Let me just read what Yulia wrote. There are two ways to do networking: in self-promotion mode and in receiving, listening, asking mode. Interestingly enough, people do appreciate a good listener. This can give you more ideas about what makes sense to communicate in this case. That's very true. And in fact, if listening is your strength, that is definitely something you want to exercise. But in the job market, because you are a business of one, it is important to be able to tell a story and to speak, because in the job market, you are a business of one and you are marketing yourself. It's hard to market without saying anything. But that is an excellent point, and I love it. And I like using the listening skill, right? It's something that we can all be better at exercising. So any more questions about knowing your strengths? I'll pause here for a minute in case you want to type a question.
I think it sparkles your creativity when you listen to other person.
Definitely, yes, yes. And you know what listening can do also is remind you of a strength that you have. So if you're listening to someone describing a problem that they have in their business, and you could say, hey, wait a minute, I've solved that sort of a problem. That's another way to make a connection. So you're absolutely right about that, Yulia. Okay, so let's move on to speaking plainly. This is something in particular in the IT field can be really problematic because IT people, and again, I'm one of them. I was not successful at my software business that I started in 2016, but it came off of a 10-year career in IT. So I thought I could be successful. But IT people tend to enjoy communicating technical details. And that's absolutely fine and very necessary in many situations. But when it comes to the job market, you want to speak more plainly. And having a simple description of what you do for whom and why it matters that's a great way to introduce yourself. I'm Ari Weinstein, and I help career professionals in technology get their next job by learning to communicate better. That's my 10-second commercial. That's my introduction. Okay. So this 10-second commercial, this very short intro, some people call it an elevator pitch, has a formula. Give your name. Notice in brackets, you don't have to say what business or company you currently work for. I never give my business name. I'm Ari Weinstein. Well, that is my business name, so I don't have to give it. But even if I'm working for someone else, I'm first going to say my name, what I do. I help IT professionals become more successful at what they do, right? And help them with their job search by strengthening how they communicate. All right. So I'm using my own formula to describe what I do. That's just one way in which you can communicate simply. Does anyone have other ideas or suggestions for how each of us could communicate more plainly and more simply to the people that we might want to connect with and might want to work for? Any suggestions? I'm opening it up, open mics if you want, unmute yourself and let me know your thoughts on speaking plainly. Going, no questions. Okay, so the so-called elevator pitch or the 10-second commercial, I prefer the term 10-second commercial. That's a great way to practice speaking plainly because it should be broadly appealing and broadly understood by someone who's not in your field. What it is that you do, how it matters, in other words, how you help customers, and perhaps how you do what you do. So now we have a little exercise. If you don't already have an elevator pitch or a 10-second commercial, I'd like to give you a few minutes to come up with your own. And we can keep it on this slide. This is the formula. And this is a formula that's used a lot. I even see this used at the top of resumes. That is absolutely fine. Some people use this at the top of their resume. And that's actually okay. But I'd like to give you a few minutes to come up with a 10-second commercial. And if you don't already have one, I gave you mine. If you don't already have one, I'd like you to come up with it. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. And I'd love for someone to step forward and tell me what's your introduction line. What's your 10-second commercial after you tell me your name? What is it that you say you do succinctly and clearly? What you do, for whom, and how. Okay? I'll turn off my video and give you all just a few minutes here. Okay, everyone, we are back. So if you look in the chat, we did get a couple of 10-second commercials that were shared by Marianne and Sophia. I like them both. Does anyone else want to share theirs? Pauline or Yulia? Let me mention one of the advantages of using a 10-second commercial that is formulaic is that you can easily customize it for different audiences. So if I were about to work with another manufacturer, I might say, I help manufacturers reach new clients by enhancing their branding. And that is in fact what I do. So it's a little bit different from what I'm doing here, but it's really all about communicating. This brand needs to communicate. And when you communicate, you are leaving an impression behind. That impression is your brand. That's the connection I make between branding and business and career coaching. It's really all about branding. So let me quickly go through, actually, before we go through this last topic, let me ask if there are any remaining questions about having that short elevator pitch, having an introductory statement. Any questions, any comments? Anyone else want to share?
Can I share mine?
Yes, please go ahead.
I said I help, my name is Pauline Guerra. I help employers improve their employer of choice brand by developing and implementing programs to improve their ability to attract and retain talent.
Yeah. So
Was that 10 seconds?
No, that's a good one. And again, think of, always take a look at these, read them to someone else, see if there are any words you can cut, right? Sophia, thank you for attending. No problem. Remember, we're recording this, so you'll get the full recording. But thanks for being here, and thanks for sharing your 10-second commercial. But Pauline, getting back to what I was saying, yes, that's really good. You know, the challenge you will have when it comes to giving your 10-second commercial is it's going to seem inadequate. And this goes back to a point that Yulia raised earlier, which is, what do you do when you have multiple skills, multiple abilities, years of experience in different fields or across an entire business, right? At the end of the day, don't think about what you want to say. Think about, what does your employer want to hear? What do they want to hear? And I like yours because I can imagine being an employer who's seeking exactly that, to improve the organization through better employee engagement, right? So yes, think about your employer, and it's okay to change it. I am changing and modifying mine all the time. This is where having a formula is definitely helpful. Okay, so there are just 4 of us left. So let me tell you about creating a system. In today's job market, it's become more important than ever to have a system and a systematic approach to your job search. I learned this system from my executive coach, and it was very successful for me. So I've implemented this, and I now use this system with my clients. But you start with a list of target companies. I'm going to give you an acronym here that can help you narrow your search for companies you might want to work for. The acronym, and this is not on the slide, so you get the benefit of hearing this by being in the meeting. The acronym is PIGS, I-G-S. P, what is the position that you want? Alternatively, what positions are available that are attractive to you? What industries are attractive to you? What industries would you like to limit your search to? And get really specific, right? Finance is a huge industry. That's too broad a term. Be specific. Is it banking, non-banking? Is it insurance? Is it investments? And what type? So P is position, I is industry, G is geography. Where are the employers that you might want to work for? Geography matters less these days because of remote work, but geography can also be a barrier. Remote work might come with some conditions. Once a month, you have to show up at the office. And remote work is the standard today, but it might not be the standard in 6, 8, 12 months. So consider the geography of where you're looking and where the employers are interested in are located. And finally, S is for size. What size employer are you interested in looking for? Using position names, industries, geographies, and size, you can run a search on LinkedIn using the search filters. You can filter by those things that I just said, by PIGS, by those 4 criteria. That will help you narrow down your search. And once you've done those searches, start a list. Well, I did a search for, I'd really like to stay within the Hudson Valley, so I'm going to look for employers who are in the New York metro area. It doesn't matter if they're in New Jersey, Connecticut, whatever, but I want to limit my search to New Jersey. I want to stay in a certain industry, or I want a certain list of industries. I'm looking for positions that are, let's say, VP and above. And I want to work for medium or large businesses, none of these small, like mom and pop shops. So using these criteria, you can come up with a list of companies that match those 4 criteria. You can have other criteria, but those are big ones that will help you really filter down. So when it comes to asking who's hiring, you can put in those filters, take the results. If you like the list that you got back, write it down, create your own spreadsheet, your own Word document, whatever it is, and list those companies. The next step for companies you would like to work for is not to go and look at their job listings, and is not to do a search for those companies on job boards or even on LinkedIn. Your next step should be to network in. Networking in means making a connection, and we talked about connecting earlier, with someone who works at this company. You may not know anyone who works there, but someone you know probably does, or might know someone who knows someone who does. Try to figure out if you can find a connection within the company. And if you can't, go ahead and use LinkedIn. Find who are the employees of this company on LinkedIn. Maybe there's someone who went to the same school that you did. Maybe there's someone from your town. Maybe there's someone who has the same interests that you do or the same job title as you. Find someone to connect with that these companies are interested in. Then, I don't have a slide for pigs, Yulia. That's a great question, but I do not. This is something I'm giving you here live in the workshop, okay? The pigs model. Track the results after you've made your list and found people to connect with. Track whether you did that. Were you able to connect with someone at the company, right? Able to learn about jobs that they have open. Were you invited or did you offer to send in a resume? Did you send in a resume? Did you hear back? Give these companies a certain amount of time to get back to you in the job search process. Make it a week or a month or whatever it is. After that time has elapsed, cross them off the list if you don't hear back. Move on to the next company. This is why you need a system, because you need to develop a list of target companies or target employer. Again, I'm using the term companies loosely. It can be organizations, it can be government jobs. That's fine, but list the employers and work the list. Do it every day. Devote time to it every day. Be systematic in managing your time. Be systematic in tracking and documenting what you're doing as far as the job search activities go, and trust the process. At some point, you will reach someone who is interested in you, who wants to speak with you, who is interested in your skills or your abilities, or just in the fact that you're looking at them, right? trust the process and keep going, but use a system. Using a system is really, really critical. You can devise your own system. I described to you the one that I use. It starts with the list of companies. Next, I network in. Then I start tracking those activities, right, on a spreadsheet with check marks. And I just keep going with that process. This is a proven technique that has helped many people. Any questions about a system and a method for systematically conducting your job search? Any questions or comments?
This was great. Thank you, Ari, so much.
Thank you, Yulia. And Yulia, you just shared your 10-second commercial, so thank you for sharing that. And I like what you wrote. I think you I think that's really well said. Marion, thank you for the comment. I'm glad you like the acronym. It's just one method and one set of sort of 4 filters, right? Those PIGS filters by which to filter your searches on job boards, on LinkedIn, wherever it is you're searching. Looking for what you want to do can be overwhelming. Even in today's market, the number of results you get from searching for positions can be overwhelming. So just use it as a starting point to create your list, then network in, and then start tracking the results. Yulia, thank you again for inviting me to lead this workshop. I hope it was helpful to all of you who attended. I hope it will be helpful to anyone who is watching the replay. And I invite all of you to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn because I'm LinkedIn/n/Ari Weinstein. I was the first Ari Weinstein on LinkedIn. Do a search for me with my middle initial, Ari M. Weinstein, and you will find me. You can also visit ariw.com. I invite you to connect with me if you're not already. And I welcome any questions after the workshop. If something occurs to you, connect with me, ask a question. I'd be happy to answer any questions that we may not have gotten to today. So thank you again.
I have to confirm. Ari is such a giver. Use your chance. Thank you so much, Ari. I stop recording.